Dear student, Assalamu alaikum. I hope all of you are fine by the grace of Almighty Allah. I am Mohammad Shahjahan, Assistant Professor, Department of Accounting, Milestone College, Uttara, Dhaka.
Dear student, this is our first lecture on chapter 11. Dear student, all of you know that this is cost price, cost of production and selling price. Dear student, after this lecture, you have an idea about cost accounting, you have an idea about cost and selling price of a trading concern. You can classify element of cost of production. You can prepare cost sheet and determine total cost price and total sales price. You have an idea about cost and its classification. Dear student, let's come to our class. Cost accounting. Cost accounting is defined as a systematic set of procedures of recording and reporting measurements of the cost of manufactured goods and performing service in aggregate and in detail. It includes methods for recognizing, classifying, allocating, aggregating and reporting such cost and comparing them with standard cost. That means, dear student, in a producing company, in a manufacturing concern, we use cost accounting, and with the help of cost accounting, we can determine the cost of goods produced. That means whatever goods we will produce, we can find out the cost of that goods with the help of cost accounting. Dear student, objectives of cost accounting. Why we will do cost accounting? Number one, ascertain profit and loss. With the help of cost accounting, we can find the profit or loss of organization. We can valuation the stock. That means what is the value of our opening stock, what is the value of our closing stock. We can value with the help of cost accounting. We can fix the responsibility of the worker, responsibility of the officers. Dear student, with the help of cost accounting, we can determine the selling price of goods. We can determine the selling price of goods. We can prepare budget. All of you know that budget means pre-plan about future activities, pre-financial plan. That means how much goods we will produce, how much raw material we have required, what is the amount of labor we have to pay. That also can be determined with the help of cost accounting. We can appraisal the project. That means we can find out the valuation of project, how much cost will be for that project. Dear student, now element of cost. Dear student, all of you know that element of cost means the items which is required for cost. Number one, raw material. The number one, raw material. For cost accounting, at first we need raw material. All of you know that for producing goods, the most essential element is raw material. That means by which we will produce the goods. Like for making shirt, we need cloth. So cloth is the raw material for making shirt. If we would like to make cloth, that time thread is the raw materials. Dear student, so at first we need raw materials, then labor. That means some people will work. Next element is student, for element of cost, at number one it is raw material, number two labor, then chargeable expenses. These three elements will produce a cost of product. Then raw material, it is two types: direct raw materials, indirect raw materials. Labor also two types: direct labor, indirect labor. Chargeable expenses two types: direct and indirect. Dear student, that means raw materials, some raw materials is essential for that product, that is direct, and some is not essential, make the product lucrative, we may use that one, that's why this is indirect materials. Labor also, some labor directly work for produce the product, that's why it is known as direct labor, and some labor indirectly help the production process, that's why that is indirect labor. And chargeable expenses also two types: some chargeable expenses directly related with the production, and some are indirectly related. Indirect chargeable expenses also three types: number one, factory overhead; number two, administrative overhead; number three, selling overhead. That means indirect chargeable expenses are three types. Factory, some indirect expenses occurred in the factory, that's why it is factory overhead. Some in the office, that means who is the one control the factory, that is administrative overhead. And for selling also some expenses is required, that is selling overhead. Dear student, important formula. Dear student, you know that in the exam no theory will come, that theory I have discussed for your MCQ. So important formula for cost sheet. Number one, prime cost. At first you have to determine prime cost, that means for cost sheet and doing this chapter, at first you have to find out the prime cost. The formula of prime cost is direct material plus direct labor plus other direct expenses. That means all three direct things. Earlier I have discussed the element of cost, and that cost, that three direct raw materials, direct labor, direct expenses, all the things together make prime cost. All the things makes together prime cost. Dear student, it will come in the MCQ, in the CQ also. In CQ, find the amount of prime cost. In MCQ, what is the amount of prime cost, or write the formula of prime cost, dear student. So the formula of prime cost all of you must memorize. Formula of prime cost is direct raw material plus direct labor plus other direct expenses. For example, direct materials, those who the material which is essential, which is the most important element for that product, that is direct raw materials. For making chair, table, wood is the direct raw materials. Then labor, that means carpenter who is working with that, that is direct labor. And other direct expenditure, maybe color and other things, that is other direct expenses. So these are the prime cost. Then next formula is production cost. Dear student, for production cost, formula is prime cost. That means at first you need prime cost plus factory overhead. Prime cost plus factory overhead. Dear student, you know that factory overhead means other indirect expenses. Factory overhead means indirect expenses which is occurred in the factory. So prime cost plus factory overhead, that means prime cost plus whatever expenses occurred in the factory, that is factory overhead. If you add together, that is production cost. That is production cost. The next formula, conversion cost. Direct labor plus factory overhead, direct labor plus factory overhead, this is called conversion cost. That means which is required for converting the product, that is conversion cost. That is conversion cost. Then some other formula, total cost. The formula of total cost is production cost plus administrative overhead plus selling overhead. That means total cost, production cost. With the production cost we have to add admin overhead and selling overhead, then it will be total cost. It will be total cost. Selling price, dear student, total cost plus estimated profit. That means whatever profit the owner would like to earn, that we have to add with total cost, then we can determine the selling price. This way we can determine selling price, this way we can find the profit. This way, this is the most important formula for this chapter, dear student. Of course all of you will memorize this formula. Now specimen of statement of cost, dear student. How we will do the math, just today's class you will see the format. Inshallah next class we will discuss it in details and we will do math so that you can understand. Like look at here, we have to write at first opening stock of raw materials. You know that prime cost, the formula of prime cost is raw material plus labor plus other direct expenditure. Look at opening raw materials, then purchase of raw materials, if there is any return or discount, the abnormal loss, carriage cost, that means usable raw materials. Then from that we have to subtract stock of raw material, that is raw material used. Then next, raw material used, add direct labor plus other direct expenses. That means the formula which we memorize, raw material plus labor plus other direct expenses, that is prime cost. And with the prime cost we have to add factory overhead. Look at, there are some example of factory overhead is given. Take a screenshot and memorize this. Factory overhead, these are the example of factory overhead. And prime cost plus factory overhead, it is factory cost or work cost or production cost. Dear student, next with this factory cost we have to add opening working process and we have to subtract closing working process, then that is cost of good manufacture or production cost. Dear student, then opening stock of finished goods, then closing stock of finished goods, that is cost of goods sold. With that cost of goods sold we have to add operating or commercial expenses, then it is total cost. And total cost minus selling price, it is profit, or total cost plus profit equals to sales price. This is the format of cost sheet. I hope all of you understand. Dear student, inshallah next class we will do math. You have to memorize whatever formula I have given, and this is most important chapter. You know that in upper class there will be other subject for cost accounting. So dear student, be careful, learn carefully. It will help you until your master's class also. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.